Aloha and mahalo for tuning in to Island Focus. I'm Lyla Berg, and as you can see, we're broadcasting this program from my home in respect to the Shelter-in-Place Directive so that you can continue to meet the people who influence our daily lives. Thank you for joining us. Mahalo for tuning in to Island Focus and joining me in meeting Catherine Paine, Chair of the Hawaiʻi State Board of Education. Aloha, Catherine. Thank you for joining us.
You're most welcome. I'm glad to be here.
Please help us understand the difference between the Board of Education and the Department of Education.
The Board of Education is appointed by the governor, and the chair is also appointed by the governor. We are a policy-making body, and we have the authority to hire and oversee the superintendent.
Where are we right now, besides knowing that the schools are closed and not knowing when they will reopen?
We're in a time where things are changing day by day, sometimes hour by hour, and we have to rebuild a system at the same time that we are moving that system along to support students. I think of my many years in the Department of Education, this is probably the most challenging time that we've ever had because of the unknowns. We want to reform our school system in ways that are different and recognizing the changes of the new century and the future, but this has plummeted us really full speed ahead into making those changes. And the challenge, I think, is to be thoughtful and really continue to keep the student and the care of the students that we have right at the center of the decisions that we make.
There have always been existing underlying issues or circumstances that we've had to deal with the Department of Education, within the department, and it's been adjusting. What are some of those that are really looming forward now?
I think one of the major ones is the concern that we have for having qualified teachers in every single one of our classrooms. We talked about a crisis prior to this. We do not have enough qualified teachers across the state. We are sometimes short 1,000 or more teachers. This situation has accelerated that. We've already lost a number of teachers who are anxious about the possibility of pay cuts. They're concerned because of the skills that are now being required of them to teach online, and they may not feel comfortable with those skills right now. And I worry a lot about who will suffer the most. It will be the children who are already marginalized, who already are below the achievement level we expect, and their ability to access technology, to access broadband connectivity, and their ability to connect individually with a teacher is going to be hampered.
How can we help?
One of the ways that you can help is through advocacy, because I don't believe people fully understand, one, the level of crisis that we are in with respect to our teaching force, and understand the kinds of skills that it takes to support children in the classrooms and online. I think some parents are really beginning to understand as they're doing their homeschooling now that teachers and the skills that teachers have are critical and that are not held by everyone. It requires a level of professionalism that not everybody has. You can't just put a warm body in a classroom. So we need the advocacy to support our teaching force, and that's by making sure the governor understands, that the legislatures understands it, because they will be making decisions that will impact whether we have qualified teachers in our classrooms.
And I imagine this is the same issue across the country. And so your recruitment procedures that we've done before maybe need to be changed as well.
We have been working towards growing more of our own teachers here, and we have some wonderful programs in place with the university and the different colleges in Hawaii. But I think that has to be accelerated. How we think about how we support teachers in this new time, our veteran teachers that may be great teachers but not have some of the skills that are now necessary, and not forgetting that we still have a lot of children, especially in our special needs populations. The classroom environment for them is a more appropriate setting than being at home because of the kinds of needs for their learning that's required. So we're going to have to figure this out. It's very, very challenging.
How are you looking at athletics at the moment?
Looking at athletics in that we've had it on our agenda for the board, but I know that there is a lot of discussion going on, and the athletic programs face the same uncertainty as the broader academic program. There are many factors beyond our control that will make the determination about whether athletics can go forward as they have been in the past, or can they go forward with different modifications, or will we have to stop certain kinds of athletic events simply because the requirements for social distancing are too stringent to allow the sport to happen? We don't know how that's going to go forward. Once again, the decisions that we make will always be with the student at the center of the decision, but it will also be made with the collaboration among the different parties that will impact us. For example, Department of Health is giving us guidance. Nationally, we're getting guidance from the CDC, and we must follow those guidance, advice that we're given, because otherwise we will have even more chaos.
Parting words as we end our conversation today.
I want to be optimistic, but I have to be frank that this is a very challenging time, and I think that we're going to see a lot of suffering before this is over, and we're going to see more children in trauma because of their home situations, and the schools have always been a place where that trauma can be addressed. We're going to see more families that are food insecure, and that affects the children who come to school. And we're going to see a lot of teachers who are very uncertain about their own lives and their own families. And all of this is going to come together in the school setting, and how we as a system of education, and really as a statewide system of care for our citizens, how we manage that and how we support the people who are taking care of our children is going to really define how we come out of this as a society.
Well, thank you very much for your time, Catherine, and we're very reassured that you're there at the helm. I know it's challenging, but thank you very much, and we will look forward to hearing more as the plan and the blueprint and the specifics become known. Thank you.
You're welcome.
We've just had the opportunity to meet Catherine Paine, who is the chair of the Hawaii Board of Education. I appreciate you joining us. Today on Island Focus, you will enjoy meeting Dr. Phil Bossert, who is the Executive Director for the Hawaii Association of Independent Schools. Thank you for being with us today, Phil.
Happy to join you, Lyla.
You have a lot on your hands as well with all your private schools. Can you share with us, please, a little bit about the challenges and adjustments that you're making?
The major one was within a couple of weeks for all of our schools to pivot from face-to-face learning in a campus setting to online learning in a home setting. And although some of our teachers are very good at that and some of our schools had some experience with it, the vast majority of our teachers and schools did not have that. And so it was a whole bunch of professional development for the teachers during spring break, and then a whole bunch of professional development for parents once it started. And I think most people don't realize there's 120 private schools in Hawaii, not just the ones you hear about all the time. And the vast majority of them are not big with thousands of students. They're 300, 200 students or less, and very small setting.
And in your role as Executive Director, it's support, because the association is a professional gathering, I guess, of all the heads of school.
This is our 50th year, so 50th anniversary year. It started out with just about 20 of the larger private schools back in 1969. Our association accredits and or licenses all of the private schools in Hawaii. And we also provide professional development services, like we run the annual Schools of the Future conference in cooperation with the Department of Education. And then we also help to market private education in general. There's about 34,500 students in Hawaii that attend private schools.
And how has your role as executive director changed or enhanced, shall I say, in this period of time?
Yeah, so we've switched really to helping gather as much information, summarize it, sift through it, and then I do a daily update with our heads of school at the end of the day on this is what we found out about this and so on. We have a Zoom gathering every other Tuesday of all the heads of school to share information, trying to help them understand how they're going to reopen. Reopening is just going to be a nightmare because they're suggesting that every child 3 to 5 or above should be wearing a mask and social distancing. And anybody who's been in a room with 5 or 10 5-year-olds, you can't imagine how trying to keep the masks on them and keep them apart is going to be. And for a large school like that has thousands of students, trying to find space for all of those students so that you only have 10 people in a room at a time and things like that it's going to be a really difficult task. And all of our schools are working on it, and we're sharing a lot of information on how to do it.
In addition to the physical distancing, there's also so many other considerations in terms of teaching strategies, interaction with the students. How do you foresee that unfolding in the independent schools?
We've seen a large shift away from covering the curriculum type education towards project-based learning over the last 10 years. And so it is somewhat easier to do project-based learning remotely, but a big piece of it is teamwork. And often it involves building something or designing something. And so even that, if you can't have groups of students together, is problematic. Not every student has his or her own bedroom or his or her own computer, and many of our schools are rural schools just like the public schools, and they have difficulty with broadband access to internet and have to share rooms with a large number of people, so it's not the ideal learning environment.
As we wrap up our conversation for today, can you just speak a little bit more about that internet connection and that broadband need across the state?
Yes, so I'm part of a broadband working group that includes like Hawaiian Telecom and Spectrum, but also about 30 other individuals at the university and the schools and the state that are working on trying to make sure that there is broadband access across the state for every area. That's not the case now. And it's not just for education. The telehealth people are involved in this as well. So that people who are very remote can get access to doctors and stuff like that. So right now, if you live in Honolulu, it's great, lots of hot spots. But if you live in Waimea or outside someplace, it's pretty difficult to get online with regular connectivity, if at all. So lots to be done in that area.
A few parting thoughts as we step into the next day of shelter in place.
I think we're a little bit worried that so many people, they've lost their jobs and have less liquidity economically. And so many of our parents may not be able to pay tuition at our schools. And I'm sure Christina Kishimoto doesn't want an extra 5,000 kids suddenly showing up on her doorstep when they're facing budget cuts and the like too. So we're doing our best to try to help parents keep their kids in our schools and do a good job of educating them in the new normal.
Well, thank you very much for your time. And it's very reassuring to know that you in particular are on this task force regarding broadband in Hawaii, and that you're helping our independent schools navigate this very challenging time. Thank you, Phil.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Lyla.
Thank you, too, for tuning in to Island Focus. You've just had the opportunity to meet Dr. Phil Bossert, who is the Executive Director for the Hawaii Association of Independent Schools. Aloha. On Island Focus today, I'm with Yvonne Lau, who is the Interim Executive Director for the State Public Charter School Commission. Appreciate you being with us today. You have your hands full right now, Yvonne.
Yes, I do. Our charter schools really, all of our schools really are dealing with a lot. So
please help us understand what adjustments you've made and what you foresee in the future that the public can support the charter schools.
I did want to talk a little bit about the difference between our public charter schools and our regular department public schools. We are all public schools, but public charter schools are run slightly differently. They're on what we call charter contracts with the state and through the commission. And so each individual public charter school is run by their own governing board, and they all have contracts with the state that identify their unique mission and vision. And so they're slightly different from our public charter schools in that way. And I think the commission really has had to, first and foremost, when the emergency struck, superintendent reached out to us and said, for the purposes of health and safety, can we combine our efforts? And so we absolutely agreed that in a situation for health and safety and for HAIMA and all that it would make the most sense for us to follow the lead of the department through the superintendent for the purposes of health and safety. Secondly, the commission also had to take action to authorize our public charter schools, all 37 of them are on individual contracts, to allow them the ability to use distance and virtual learning to assist our students in continuing their learning and enrichment activities. So it's slightly different in that way. And so we've had to make those changes so that our schools could do what they needed to do to reach their students while we are at home. And for those students and communities that don't have access to technology or broadband, having to go to a packet of learning materials and working with parents individually to help them continue the learning for their students. So that's some of the big changes that have happened. It's not probably very much different from all of our other public schools and private schools, but that's one of the things that has really impacted our schools.
How is this period of time and the changes, how are they affecting the different formats of your schools?
Yeah, that's a really difficult question to answer because our charter schools are so different. We've got project-based schools, we've got Hawaiian-focused, culture-focused schools, we've got Hawaiian immersion schools, we've got traditional brick and mortar schools. And I think the one thing I can say for all of our schools is that the parents and the level of parent engagement is very high. And this is because our parents who choose to have their children enroll and attend in a public charter school have made that conscious decision. We can all learn from that. That is one of, I think, the best practices for any successful school. And when you see that parents are engaged and committed to the mission and the vision of that learning of that school, you see outstanding student outcomes. So I think that's one of the things that our charter schools are really uniquely positioned and have been doing some outstanding work in that area. So I think that's something that we all have to adapt to, and I think we all can learn from that too as well.
The terminology that's being used is the new normal. Yep. I think it will become normal. New normal is kind of scary to people.
It means that we have to be more prepared. And I think that is something that the blended model of education is something that I think everyone is looking at. I think, we've got about 9 of our 37 charter schools that already have or use that model. And I think they're all learning from each other. Schools like Myron B. Thompson and Hawaii Technology Academy have reached out to all of their colleagues. And I would say that they have some really great best practices that they can share with all of our schools, public and private. I think that model is something that we may need to get used to. If social distancing continues to be a requirement, we really have to think creatively about how we accommodate all the students, or do we go on to a virtual or blended platform where half the time they come to school and the other half of the time they're working from home? I think that there are a number of our younger students, our elementary students, some of our special education students that really need the one-on-one in-person assistance. And I think it's a huge challenge. And so we've got to take a deep breath and think of some really creative ways. But we also need to be cognizant of the fact that this new normal is going to require us to think differently about what does student achievement look like, what are the expectations we can have for our schools, and what is accountability going to look like. So that's the sort of the long-term question that I think for all of us in public education, especially, we're going to have to figure out the new normal for that.
Well, I know it's a very challenging time now, and exactly what you said, we will do this together. I don't know, I'm excited about the possibilities and also the leadership that the public charter schools can take in our state.
Yeah, I'm confident too.
You've just had the opportunity to meet Yvonne Lau, who is the Interim Executive Director for the State Public Charter School Commission. Hello. Joining us today on Island Focus is Stacy Aldrich, State Librarian for the Hawaii Public Library System. Mahalo for being with us, Stacy.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to be with you today.
So as the State Librarian, you have in your embrace all the state libraries across the state. What are your challenges and opportunities? And ultimately, what can we as a public do to support the state libraries?
It's really amazing to think that it's only been 6 weeks. It feels like a lifetime that we've all been trying to figure out what can we do right now to support our communities. And for public libraries, our physical doors maybe have been closed, but our virtual doors have been open. And so this time has given us an opportunity to really accelerate creating more programming online to support communities. So we've added streaming media and movies for families to watch. We've been able to extend some of the services that normally you could only use in a library, like Ancestry, so people can work on their genealogy while they're at home. Our librarians have started to do virtual programming so people can see and kids can see their favorite storytime librarian reading a story to them if they miss them. So we've been really using this time to look at what we can do. We've also looked at how do we relax our policies so that everybody has access. In the past, we would block people who had fines and fees. We just lifted those so people could just get access to all these amazing resources of ebooks and e-magazines and movies and language and all kinds of learning opportunities online. So looking at our policies, so how can we support people, even making sure people have a library card. So we've been able to put up our application online so people can have a digital card so they can have access to all these things. And to our great surprise, without a lot of media, in the first 3 weeks, we had over 1,400 people apply for library cards. So the library has been this place that people have been able to count on. The challenge has been we also have communities that don't have as much access. So while we have these virtual libraries available, we have people who don't have connection to enjoy these virtual libraries. And so normally in our physical spaces, that's where we would have access to the internet. People could use computers, they could bring in their device. A lot of people still have a tablet or they might have their phone and they can use Wi-Fi. How do we extend our technology so that even when we're not open, people will have connectivity? At the same time, during all of this, we've had to pay attention to all of the requirements and not wanting people to be next to each other and near each other. So it's very hard because we're about connecting people and we have to figure out new ways to connect people at a social distance.
Well, yes, and when you open, and we will open again.
Yes.
The libraries are the places where we feel the safest, actually, where we can learn and explore quietly. How is that going to change?
For us, it'll feel a little different in the beginning because we're going to slow roll out services. So we'll start with book drops, and then we'll have services from the door where we can pick up materials, and then we'll invite people in, but we'll have to make sure that there's social distance. So we're in the process now of moving computers around so people don't have to sit closely to each other. We're thinking about having more technology within the library that we can check out so people can go sit in quiet corners. So I think the difference is we'll be there, we'll be smiling faces, probably masks for a while, but we're just trying to create the space so that people can come back in and use all of our great resources.
I know the state libraries are supporting and very helpful with the independent schools, and as well as the public schools. But there's some areas that are not connected by broadband.
Again, we're trying to figure out ways that we can extend our connectivity to the public outside of our buildings to reach people. So if they can't come in, they can use Wi-Fi outside. And for us, we found that we need to actually do more work in extending that technology out so people have access. So again, it's just trying to figure out ways to broadcast more signal to our communities so they can get onto the internet. We want to support all of those people who are coming back in, who will be trying to find jobs, and families who will have limited resources. That connectivity is going to be so important. And for students, we want to make sure that we're helping them with summer slide. Now they have a little bit of a longer slide, it would seem, because it's been a challenge too. And again, I still can't believe it's only been 6 weeks. It feels like a lifetime. I hope that people will really recognize that libraries are about opportunity, and make sure you let your legislature and the governor know that we need to make sure there's investment in the library so that we can have those resources for everyone.
It's kind of exciting, all the new changes and the adjustments that you're making. And in closing our conversation, what do you envision will remain?
I think everything we do remains, it's just a little different. So programming might be a little bit different. I think what we've been trying to do, which is I think a challenge for everybody, is normally you can plan for the future. You can think about what's it going to look like next week. So this is what we're going to do. Now we don't know. Like 30 days from now, the world could be completely different. And so I think our biggest challenge is figuring out how to be really flexible and pivot with the changes that are happening, and be able to continue to provide the services of connecting people to information and ideas and to our stories.
Well, thank you very much for your time, Stacey. And what I really appreciate hearing is that we're all in this together. And even though we may have faced times of uncertainty or the unknown, this is so incredibly different that as long as we communicate, as you have said it also, we can get through this well with each other. Thank you.
I think we can too. Thank you.
You've just had the occasion to meet Stacey Aldrich, who is the Hawaii State Librarian. Mahalo. Thank you for being with us today on Island Focus, particularly during this very difficult and challenging time. I'm Lyla Berg. On behalf of the Island Focus crew and the volunteers and staff at Ōlelo Community Media, aloha and malama pono. Take care of yourselves and be kind to one another. See you soon.